Another powerful earthquake just hit Sarangani, and it was all over the news, magnitude 7.0. So that after we just had a magnitude 7.8. So is this an aftershock, or is this the same location? What is going on? Because we had on June 8 a magnitude 7.8. Is that event not finished? That is the big question. What if today's earthquake, August 5th, 2026, is another reminder that the crust in that area, this is southern Mindanao, is still adjusting? Or is this even more? And why did one agency initially report this as a magnitude 7.0? Basically 258 kilometers, that's roughly 160 miles away from where this earthquake actually happened. Why were they so off with the location? So that is really strange. So we need to talk about that. But also, we have more questions that we need to answer in this video. There's another question, and that's one that is really, really important. So listen to this, because when the moment tensor came in, like that beach ball that tells us the faulting, it told us exactly which fault moved with this powerful earthquake that has already delivered aftershocks, right? We already have higher magnitude aftershocks. And it is not the fault that the seismologists have been warning about. This is very, very strange. So hold that thought, guys. I'll come back to that. This strong earthquake struck, basically, you see the location here on the map, offshore near Sarangani, that's the southern Philippines, at 12:14 p.m. Philippine Standard Time, Wednesday, August 5th. So that's 4:14 UTC time, same day. The revived USGS survey solution puts it at a magnitude 6.3 at a shallow depth of 10 kilometers, roughly 6.2 miles. This is where they always place them when they kind of shallow. This is roughly the location of the epicenter that they're giving us is roughly 32 kilometers, 20 miles southwest of Sarangani. And the Philippine agency, PHIVOLCS, has it slightly different. They say it's magnitude 6.4. The depth is way more shallow, 13 kilometers, 8.1 miles, with the epicenter 37 kilometers or 23 miles southwest of Balut Island. So Balut Island, you see this here on the map. This is the municipality of Sarangani, Davao Occidental. So quick clarification. This is really important because this trips people up constantly when we talk about this location. There are two Saranganis. There is Sarangani, the province, that is basically next to General Santos. That's where June's devastation was concentrated. June was really, really bad. I'll get to that. And there's Sarangani, the island municipality, that's down in Davao Occidental. So today's quake that we're dealing with is near the island. And of course, when we saw that strong quake, we were worried, will it cause the devastation that it caused in June again? But same name, two. Different place, roughly 100 kilometers, 62 miles apart. So although this event that we're dealing with right now is significantly smaller than the June magnitude 7.8, it is still a major earthquake in its own right. This is there is no way around this. So who felt it? Where did they feel it? And how hard did it hit? Because it was shallow, and it shows, because PHIVOLCS has recorded intensity scale 5. That means strong shaking in Glan, in Sarangani, intensity 4, moderately strong in Kiamba, General Santos city, intensity 3 in Maasim, Maitum, Malapatan in Sarangani, Lake Zebu, and also there's intensity 2 in Banga, Surala, slightly further out. USGS estimates maximum shaking around the modified Mercalli 6. So at that level, everyone feels it. Objects, they're falling from shelves. Poorly constructed buildings may suffer damage. And we do have poorly constructed buildings there. well-engineered structures usually perform much better. So PHIVOLCS says no damage is expected. And here's something that I want to add to what the bulletins don't say. That assessment assumes we're dealing with healthy buildings. But in Glan, June 8, 32 people were lost, right? Structures across that area are already cracked and weakened right now. So if we're dealing with a magnitude 6.4 or whatever this was, maybe they'll adjust it again. If that hits like a damaged masonry buildings, and we have a lot of these buildings, that's a different event than just a magnitude 6.4 hits a healthy, good standing building, or even an intact masonry building. So keep that in mind, as we will probably get more reports in the next 24 hours. But now, the strange part, this is really strange. I looked at this and I was like, okay, I got to tell you this, because immediately after the earthquakes, after earthquake and aftershock, PHIVOLCS issued an automatic bulletin estimating magnitude 7.0, and that automatic solution placed the epicenter roughly 258 kilometers, 160 miles southeast of Sarangani, near the Talaut Islands. That is practically in Indonesian waters. So yes, that bulletin clearly stated that it was automatic. It was generated within minutes using only like the first available seismic arrivals, but usually they're not that off. I've never seen it that off. And then as more data came in, the picture changed dramatically. The reviewed solution relocated the earthquake far to the north, just southwest to Sarangani, and they dropped the magnitude to 6.3. So now everyone says, wow, that just looks like a normal aftershock from the 7.8. And it didn't in the first place somewhat. So PHIVOLCS has published that revision in their earthquake information number 2. Guys, this is not a small adjustment. A magnitude difference of 0.7 points, that represents roughly 11 times less energy than originally estimated. So, and it changes the geological interpretation entirely. So instead of occurring far offshore near Indonesia, the earthquake now appears directly connected to the ongoing deformation that is surrounding the rupture zone of the June 8th earthquake. So, okay, I want to say this is not PHIVOLCS getting it wrong. Still, this is exactly how the system is designed to work. I mean, speed first and then accuracy second, basically. But yeah, it's why you should never build a conclusion on an automatic solution. But here's what I promised you at the beginning, where I said, hold that thought. The focal mechanism, that beach ball that we're getting, it has now been published, and it's unusually clean. It's unusually clean. What do I mean with this? 92% double couple. So that means this is a simple, straightforward rupture on a single fault plane. This is what that means. That means no volcanic component, no complexity to argue about, right? The W phase solution gives a magnitude of 6.35 at 11.5 kilometers, 7.1 miles depth. This is very shallow, with a half duration of just 3.5 seconds. And what it shows, guys, this is pure thrust. Both nodal planes have a break near 90 degrees, like 80 and 96 if we look at that. That is essentially if we look at what that did. Pure dip, slip, reverse motion. So the principal axis also confirm it. This is the text signature of a thrust earthquake. Now, is that good or bad? The single most important number is the compression direction, 255 degrees, meaning maximum compression runs roughly east, northeast to west, southwest. So that is precisely the convergence direction that you would accept for what is there. It's called the Celebes seafloor subducting eastwards beneath Mindanao subduction zone. And both nodal planes strike north-northwest to south-southeast, parallel to the trench in this exact segment. So when we look at the June 8 main shock itself, the attribution was generally unresolved. It may have ruptured the northern Sangige Trench, the southern Cotabato Trench, or even some combination of both. That is still basically unclear. But the Shanghai side dips west, so today's east dipping solution would argue for the Cotabato Trench, that this was actually the culprit of this shock and of the aftershocks. So to have it completely complete, there's two other faults, famous faults, that run through Mindanao, the Mindanao fault and the Philippine fault. These names are easier. Both are left lateral strike slip structures, well to the northeast. So neither of them is a candidate here for that earthquake. Really, like a strike slip fault does not produce a thrust beach ball. And here's the detail that I think makes the difference and is from what I see right now, currently underreported. The moment tensor depth is 11.5 kilometers. That's roughly 7.1 miles. So compare that to the main shock, the 7.8 that we had on June 8th. So PHIVOLCS placed it 33 kilometers, roughly 21 miles. USGS put it near 57 kilometers, 35 miles depth. So today's event is far undip of the patch that broke on June 8th. So this is not a re-rupture of the same structure, of the same surface. So it's either the shallow near trench portion of that subduction interface, or it's basically how we can call that a splay thrust in the accretionary wedge that's actually sitting above it. Both are consistent with stress transfer from the June 8th quake. It would just be a different part of the system. So, and one more thing that is worth saying, and I'll say it plainly, shallow thrust close to the trench are disproportionately, I always love this word when I have to say it to you, tsunami-genic. I love it. Tsunami-genic for their size. So at magnitude 6.4, if that's the magnitude, that's not a practical concern right now. But it explains exactly why an initial like 7.0 estimate has triggered a tsunami evaluation. It's the same fault geometry. It's one magnitude unit higher. And then, you know, magnitude 7, the conversation is very different compared to a 6.4. And just for reference, on the June 8th, the 7.8, we did have tsunami waves about 1 meter, roughly 3 feet. That can be deadly, guys. That can push you out, that can push you under, that can sweep you away, push you against other structures, mingle it with debris, everything floating. This is deadly. This can be deadly, even lower than a meter. So people hear magnitude 6.4 and assume pressure was released. Yeah, so let's put a number on it. So today's event released roughly 1/150th of the main shock. So it relieved almost nothing. So is this just another aftershock? Based on location and mechanism, yes, most likely. PHIVOLCS has been characterizing recent quakes in this area of aftershocks, and if we go back 30 days here on the USGS map, you see there's lots of them, right? We also had a 6.5 offshore Davao Occidental. They said exactly the same aftershock. There was a 5.1 on August 1st, Balu Island. But the scale of this sequence is enormous. Listen to this. As of June 19th, PHIVOLCS had recorded more than 8,500 aftershocks, including 3 above magnitude 6.0. So if that's an aftershock, it's probably one of the strongest ones, right? Largest so far is 6.5. The initial aftershock zone for the 7.8 covered roughly 165 by 150 kilometers. That's roughly 103 miles by 93 miles south of General Santos City. So large aftershocks above magnitude 6 are entirely normal for a 7.8, but most sequences decay over time. Post-June analysis, that's interesting to remember, identified a section of the Cotabato Trench that's roughly 70 to 100 kilometers long, 43 to 62 miles, that has not ruptured since at least the 1950s, and probably not since 1918. That's more likely, because 1918 there was a magnitude 8.3 that struck there. This is what this thing can produce. So it sits between the June 2026 rupture and a magnitude 7.5 event in 2023. So we have a stretch there between two major earthquakes, but this stretch has not ruptured, has not released stress, and can produce bad stuff. So that gap that I just talked about is to the north. Today's earthquake was at the southern end of the zone. So this is not the scenario that seismologists are fearing or are watching out for, this quake. The loaded one is still sitting there. I want to give you context how active this system is so that we're not falling into the trap, like saying, oh my God, this is unusual and the end of days are coming, because this system, 17 magnitude 6.5 or larger earthquakes have struck this region, 7 of them above magnitude 7.0 in the past decade alone. If we go further back, PHIVOLCS counts at least 7 significant earthquakes between magnitude 5.7 and 8.0 that has affected Sarangani and nearby provinces between 1917 and 2023. The last damaging one before the June one was a magnitude 6.8 in 2023. So human cost of June 8 is still being counted. As of July 21st, at least 106 people lost, 1,316 injured, 7 still missing, and over 121,300 homes damaged or destroyed. So this is really crazy. Now, the next several days matter. Seismologists will be watching whether aftershocks decay normally or whether activity begins migrating to neighboring fault segments. So that migration would be the signal for us, not the magnitude, the migration. So definitely, and that's a fact, this strong 7.8 June 8 magnitude has changed the stress in this area, has definitely changed the stress field beneath southern Mindanao, and hopefully this 6.4 is only another chapter in this story of it. adjusting, but I can tell you it's almost certainly not the last one. I'm pretty sure. So I'll keep monitoring this for you guys. And if you want to know what's happening with these insane wildfires in Washington and Oregon, and so many of you have asked, how can this be? The house is turned to dust, and there's a tree, perfectly green, standing next to these burnt down houses. So you have a neighborhood, all structures, gray, white ash, and the tree's perfectly healthy green. What is possible? There's been several theories that you came up with. I've explained it to you in this video. I see you here in a second.